Hello, everyone. This is our fifth episode, and today we're going to do things a little bit different. My name is Luis Patricio. I'm the board chair of London Cycle Link in London, Ontario. I hope everyone is enjoying the sun, or if you're at home watching, I hope you can enjoy the sun later. So today we have two very special guests, and that's why I will be the host of this episode today because the guests are from Brazil. And as some of you know, I'm also from Brazil. But first, I want to invite Daniel Hall to give us some quick announcements before we start the episode. Dan.
Thanks, Luis. I'm going to give an update on our petition to see more safe space for pedestrians and cyclists in the city, that it's reached over 1,000 hits. And at London Cycle Link, we're actively engaged with city staff and politicians on how to move forward and create more space for people in this immediate time, and also thinking about the future and the recovery. So know that that's happening. We also have a resource page on our website for all the resources that are happening around the world. So if you're inspired by today's conversation and you want to find out more of what's going on in Canada and Ontario, but or around the world, go to our website and check that out. You can see past episodes as well that we've done, and we've already started some promo for the future episodes at londoncyclelink.ca/webcast. So please check that site out as well. There's lots of good videos on there, and we keep adding more. And this one I'm excited about. And our next week, next Wednesday at 3 p.m., we are going to have a special guest as well from Toronto, Nancy Smith-Lee, and we're talking bikeonomics. And this is an exciting time as we think about economic recovery and other things about how bikes can impact economics. So if you like where this is headed and want to find out about that, please tune in for next Wednesday's episode. Luis, you've also got an announcement for us.
Yeah, and it's perfect timing for episode next week about bikes and economics, because we are having Green and Inclusive Recovery Town Hall, and we're going to have MP Peter Fradiscatas, MPP Peggy Sattler, and Deputy Mayor Jesse Helmer. And this is really being put together by a lot of different organizations here in the city, in London, Ontario, including the Climate Action London, the London Environmental Network, the Chippewa, the Thames First Nations Urban League for Our Kids, Women in Politics, the Canadian Council, the Council of Canadians, the Middlesex London Food Policy Council, and the London Poverty Research Center. So stay tuned for next Wednesday. We're going to talk about green economy, bikes, and inclusive economy. And without further ado, I want to invite our two guests here today. So the first one is Aline Cavalcante. Some of you might know Aline from the movie Bikes versus Cars. So we're super excited to have you here. And like I said, this episode will be a little bit different. I'll be talking in English. Daniel might join us a little bit. JP will be talking in English as well. Aline will have her participation in Portuguese, but we'll try to keep you in the loop as much as possible. So I want to invite JP also to the conversation. And before we start talking about the good stuff and all the bikes can do for our cities, I just want to the two of you give us a brief introduction. So Aline, if we can start with you. Tell us a little bit about who are you and what is the work that you're doing right now and how COVID has affected your life.
Okay, hello, how are you? Thank you for inviting me, Luis. I'm trying to speak in English, but my English is so bad. So I'm a journalist originally, but nowadays I'm working with cyclists and urban development. I'm feminist also, and I'm main character in Bikes vs Cars, let's say. Director of public participation in Ciclocidade, that's the association in São Paulo, Cyclist Association in São Paulo. and I'm a defender of the environment and sustainable development in connection with cities, countryside, maybe, campo.
The rural area?
Good. And forests.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you, Aline. Would you like to add how COVID is affecting your life, your personal life?
Especially in my life, I think that the social isolation,
Distancing?
Distancing, because my work and my action need the inspiration that's in the city and the connection with the people. And stay at home for me, it's terrible for many time. So for me, the COVID is limiting for the action. It's clear.
Yeah, the human connection is important, right? Like we need to
For
be out
me
there and
especially.
connecting with people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. JP, tell us who you are.
Hi, everyone. So I'm JP for the Brazilian speakers, or JP, the translation. I am based now in São Paulo, in the same city as Aline, perhaps a couple of kilometers away, and we cannot see each other. So that's really frustrating. So answering backwards, I think I would say also that's the biggest deal when we put so much of our energy and enthusiasm on cycling, and believing that cycling is a way of freedom, it's a way of enjoying the city and living the city in a different way. When we have a pandemic, a situation like this with COVID, it puts us in a really difficult moment of questioning our biggest value, which is living the city in a bicycle. So I would say that is my biggest drama with COVID right now. I have always, when I have to do something, especially market, I still do it with a bike. So that's the good part of it. It's the best day of the week, but definitely limited to my surroundings. So who am I? I am working now in an institute called Alana. We work on children's protection and children's rights. And I deal with especially with engagement and mobilization campaigns, but also with environmental issues, especially connected to what we're going to talk about: air quality, climate justice, also deforestation. So looking at different aspects in which children are the most affected. So we can talk a little bit about that as well, how children are the most affected by climate change, by air quality, by air pollution, right? And also by the way we develop or design our cities. I also have co-founded Anjo. It's a network all around the world that connects to people to start cycling, but also become a network to advocate for cycling in their cities. So we are in over 35 countries and over 7,000 members. And as well as you mentioned here I saw in the credits, I also was the first bicycle mayor in São Paulo. So it's a network by bikes, BYCS. It's an organization in the Netherlands. And now there's a new bicycle mayor in São Paulo, but I've been keeping on with this group as well, with this network.
Yeah, that's awesome. We have our local bicycle mayor here as well, Shelly Carr. So let's jump into our discussion here. And this is a quote that I really like to use. I think I used on other episodes as well. And I'm just gonna read it here so it sets the stage for what we're talking about. And this is from an article called "In a Global Emergency, the Bicycle Shines." This is hardly the first time that cities have used cycling as an emergency transportation solution. The usefulness of bicycles in disaster recovery was demonstrated anew after severe earthquakes and the 1973 OPEC oil embargo. And I guess we're seeing this again as so many cities around the world are seeing the bicycle as part of the solution to respond to the pandemic. So any of you would like to go first and share with us why do you think that bikes are so efficient as a pandemic response?
Ok, Aline.
Pode ser. Posso falar em português?
Sure.
Eu sei que tem muita gente assistindo do Brasil, então a gente pode fazer essa dupla do português e do inglês. Eu acredito que a bicicleta pode proporcionar uma conexão maior das pessoas com as cidades. Ela pode desacelerar as cidades, tornar as cidades mais calmas e promover uma nova cultura de paz, de respiração, de tempo, de saúde física, mental, individual e coletiva. E, nesse sentido, promover mais cidadãos ativos também. Não acho que todos os ciclistas são cidadãos ativos, mas ela promove essa conexão maior.
Thanks, Aline. JP, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I would say, well, not only in the pandemic, but in any case of natural disasters like earthquakes, we've been seeing the bicycle as a tool for resilience, right? So in places where nothing can reach or food is not there, the bicycle has been used as a tool to reach those places and to access. So it's a tool for regeneration, I think, for this pandemic, to regenerate the cities, regenerate the society, the way we live, the way we breathe, right? So we're looking a lot of this aspects. In this moment, right now, during the COVID in São Paulo, bicycle has played a really important role in delivering with the bike couriers. It has grown rapidly, although not in the best way that we would like to because of all the precarism employment, but that's definitely a role that cycling has in the logistics and delivery during the pandemic.
Thanks, JP. I think you both touched on some important topics. That's how, and I think in our normal life, we don't see when everything is so abundant and we have, cheap energy and a lot of the resources are available to us. We don't see how big of a gap it is having bikes as one of the main sources of transportation, one of the main modes of transportation in the cities, and other more energy intensive ones that are really restricted to just a part of the population. So when we have, like earthquakes or floods or a global pandemic, you can really see that the bike that really requires very little resources and money and space can just become available and really affordable and feasible solution to a lot of people. And another important thing that JP mentioned is how the bicycle couriers are growing, and we're just starting a new cargo bike delivery service here in London called ZEDS. I don't remember exactly what it means. Zero emission delivery service, who is addressing this gap as well, using the bike as part of the logistics in the city. But it's an initiative that is starting by one of our local bike shop. So he addresses also the precarious employment issue. It's not this multinational corporation that gets the big share, but it's really encouraging local people to be part of the initiative. And when you have people from the local community working on this, you can really see that not only the business can thrive, but you ensure that the money stays in the local economy. So this is whatever solutions we're looking into the future that we want to implement here in London, Ontario, in Brazil, or anywhere around the world, I think we should ask ourselves if it's not just pumping dollars back into the economy, but making sure that those dollars stay in the local community and they are directed to the people that really need those dollars to survive. So my next question for you guys, and also thinking about emergency response, and I know that you've been involved in many different networks, not only in Brazil but throughout the world. What are the stories that you've been hearing, watching, that you think they are really inspiring and that we can be adopted in many different places? JP, would you like to give us some examples?
Indeed. Yeah. Well, we can talk also about the bad ideas, but also start with the good ideas to be interesting. Well, for me, let's talk about the impact in our daily lives, which has been the lack of commuting, right? So the best way, let's remember the ASI approach. I even forgot what it stands for, but I think it's avoid, right? So the first one of the ASI, the avoid, shift, and improve approach in transportation is to avoid transportation, which would be to say to avoid people from needing to commute so far away and for so long and everything. So I think we're reflecting a lot on the question of being at home and working from home, and seeing that this can be a possibility to really lower the emissions and lower all the need of transportation all around the city. So I think people and businesses and cities are conducting this really fast, which would be something that we could do in any time, and it's not only now, to especially thinking on the impacts on traffic and on emissions. So I would say home office and the lack of or avoiding the transportation is something that we are going to look at as a solution from now on, I think, even more, although it was already said many times. And then I think one of the nicest thing I've seen, I don't know if it's also circulated around London and around Canada, this video talking about some measures in Europe, especially Paris, on cycling. So Paris already had a law, and they just boosted that during the pandemic to pay people to go to work by bicycle or do everything by bicycle. So I think it doesn't have to be paying the money, but all those kind of incentives and campaigning for people to cycle, to keep the social distancing, is a really important measure for that. So I remember I remember in Brussels, for example, I was there during the terrorist attack in the subway, and people were really skeptical of using the subway. And the next day, cycling increased by 20 to 30%, I think. So people normally, when they're skeptical of using the public transport because of a risk like COVID, they naturally would go to cycling. So, and this is, I'm talking about developing city or developed cities for cycling. So what we need to do is to really give the campaigning and incentives for people to cycle, but also the infrastructure. So that's my last point, which would be a lot of measures. And I would say your hometown, Curitiba, or not your hometown, but where you lived before, Luis, in Brazil, they did a really interesting initiative, which was to put temporary bike lanes all over the city. So basically a whole lane from a car lane for cycling. And this is the best moment to practice that and to try those kind of things, because people are not going to complain because of traffic jam, because there's no traffic jam in these days. People are at home. So giving this possibility of saying like, oh, you can go around. So this is a really good way of getting out of the lockdown, is like, you can go around, but only with a bicycle, and those bike lanes, we're going to give their infrastructure, temporary infrastructure. And that can be shifted to the tactical urban planning, which is those small strategies to give space to pedestrians and to cyclists either temporary or fixed, but really simple solutions, just like painting a little bit and sharing the lane as a way of making people seeing that like, oh, we can recover and we can go out on a bicycle instead of getting the cars, which are the bad solutions that we're seeing here in São Paulo. But we can talk about that in a second, so I didn't speak so much.
Thank you, JP. Yeah, you touched on a few very important topics there, and definitely cycling infrastructure is one of the biggest and most important first steps. If you really want to encourage people and even pay people to bike to work, as they're doing in many cities in Europe. And I think that we even have a city here in Canada, in Quebec, that they are providing a subsidy for people who want to fix their bikes or to help buy new bikes. So if you want to encourage people, it's really important to make sure that we have a safe and convenient cycling infrastructure. Aline, do you want to share any of the emerging best practices with us, or any other good ideas lying out there?
Eu me sinto contemplada com o que o JP trouxe, né, em relação à estrutura. Eu acredito que várias cidades do mundo têm utilizado o conhecido como urbanismo tático, que é essa ferramenta de utilizar materiais leves, baratos e que são fáceis de remanejar para a gente conseguir experimentar um novo uso, né, uma nova readequação do espaço urbano. Então, reprogramar, né, o espaço público, né? Então, além disso, eu acredito que eu tenho visto em várias cidades um movimento muito forte, especialmente de mulheres, se colocando como fundamental para tomadas de decisão. Então, muitas mulheres fazendo debates políticos sobre a importância de ter diversidade nesses grupos que têm mapeado soluções para o coronavírus, para outras pandemias, epidemias que podem aparecer, para outras crises, como a própria crise do aquecimento global. Então, um movimento muito forte de mulheres reivindicando espaço de decisão nessas cidades. E aí a gente tem grandes exemplos, como Nova Zelândia, como na Alemanha, aqui em Bogotá, né, na Colômbia. São lugares de lideranças femininas que conseguiram aí ter bons índices, né, de combate a essa pandemia. Isso tem me chamado bastante atenção. E sobre especificamente a bicicleta, eu anotei aqui as ciclofaixas temporárias, que o JP já mencionou. E aqui na América Latina tem exemplos disso. Mesmo Bogotá, Quito, Buenos Aires. Então, não é uma solução apenas da Europa ou dos Estados Unidos, Canadá, mas uma solução que pode ser adotada aqui na América do Sul. E aqui em São Paulo, a gente teve durante muitos anos, quase 10 anos, uma política pública de lazer chamada ciclofaixas de lazer. E era todos os domingos e feriados, e era uma estrutura temporária, que se colocava domingo e tirava no domingo mesmo. E aquela experiência da ciclofaixa de lazer nos mostra que as pessoas elas podem mudar os seus hábitos quando elas são também estimuladas para isso. Então, todos os domingos, as pessoas olhavam para a rua, viam aqueles cones e aquele tanto de bicicleta, e isso estimulava o uso, né? Estimulava sair a pé. Então, eu acho que uma das grandes coisas, assim, uma das grandes experiências dessas ciclofaixas temporárias é, de fato, possibilitar que as pessoas pensem, optem, né, considerem a bicicleta nessa readequação da pós-pandemia. Se a gente não tiver essa estrutura que convide, é muito difícil que as pessoas saiam da sua zona de conforto tão fácil, né?
Thanks, Aline. I was just trying to summarize one of the things you said so I can share with some of our friends here in London and in North America. It was great that you mentioned, so Aline mentioned the importance of having women as part of the decision-making process. And she mentioned some examples in New Zealand, Germany, and Colombia and how their response to the crisis is being very effective. And part of that efficiency, that effectiveness, is having women as part of the decision-making process. So we'll try to keep that in mind, and I hope that here in our city and everywhere around the world, we can have women and having them as part of our decision process. And even not only in the decision process, but I think even in the conversations, most of the guests that we invited for this webcast, for example, are women, and unfortunately, some of them were not available to be with us in this conversation. But I'm happy to have you here, Aline, and I'm happy to have our next guest is also a woman, and I think her vision about bikes and economics will be a great asset to our conversation. Aline also mentioned the temporary bike lanes all over the world. So it's not just a local solution. It's not just North America or Europe, or like you see this in South America and all around the world. So it's really something that is very flexible and doable in many different contexts. And it was a very good reminder, Aline. You mentioned the ciclofaixa de lazer, which I think here in North America we call it the ciclovia, because it started in Bogota, Colombia, and we have Gil Peñalosa here with the 880 cities based out of Toronto. And he's definitely a big supporter of more spaces for cyclists and pedestrians. Those ciclovias, they were kind of a temporary bike lane, if I may say, because it's this 1 day or 1 weekend bike lane for a few blocks, and in some cases for many blocks, where people can just see that we can do things different, and just creating that space for the possibility of using our streets not only to get from point A to point B. It's not just transportation, but it's actually a place to be. And our conversation last week was really interesting with Steve McDowell, and we're talking about those third places and how the bicycle can actually make the whole city this third place that is not where we live, but it's a place that we can meet other people and that we feel that we belong. So thank you so much for adding that. And my next question would be, as I said, one of the most important things is to talk about infrastructure. This is crucial in any city that is taking the bike seriously. But there are also the soft measures, and I think JP already mentioned some of them. They're even paying people to bike to work, and the reason, and there is also an economic argument in the grand scheme. They show that the government actually saves money when they pay people to bike, because they save money for many other costs, being public health, air pollution, road maintenance, costs with repairing and all the traffic collisions. So it's not just to help people that don't have the money, but it's really to help the economy. And I'd like to know if you have any other examples. And I was looking at my stuff. Aline, I don't know if you remember this. This is one of the campaigns of one of the organizations that Aline is involved with, Ciclocidade. And this is a campaign that about bike-friendly businesses. Also, this explains how the bike can be a great supporter for local businesses, and how cyclists actually spend more money, and they actually help all those local businesses thrive when you have more cycling in those areas. And we'll be talking about this next week as well. We even have this little sticker that says, welcome. So Aline, do you want to talk about any of those other soft measures, initiatives that we could implement to help leverage cycling in cities? Is there anyone that comes to your mind? So anything other than infrastructure, how to promote and encourage cycling. And like one big example is actually, and maybe JP want to talk a little bit more about that, is, well, the Bike Anjo network, and how just bringing people together and teaching people how to bike and sharing those experiences just create this whole new world of opportunities for people to cycle more in the cities. So JP, would you like to tell us a little bit more about the Bike Anjo network?
Yeah, it could be, because I think that's the way we started any kind of measure for cyclists here in São Paulo, right? And I wouldn't say that's only the role from Bike Anjo, but bike activists in general. We always think of this idea of the infrastructure being the only way to start, and well, now what we can reflect on is that infrastructure is essential, but we don't have to wait for it only to really have a cycling community. In the other, and also the opposite, sometimes we would have cases, there are many examples around the world that this amazing infrastructure was built from scratch, and then people were just not using the bike lanes. So we also have those cases. So that's basically how we kind of started in São Paulo, as one bike activist kind of pushing other other people to start cycling, and every one of us have a story of someone or someone's that we helped to start cycling in the city. I know that's the case with me, that people helped me out, but also that I helped other people, and Aline also helped a lot of people. And by Anjo, we have some activities in order to do that. Well, and I think that's quite common from many bike organizations around the world. But just to mention, the cycling lessons or bike workshops. So we have a container full of bikes in a square just nearby my house. And in that container, we have bikes and tools and everything. And every weekend we would have, now it's of course temporarily closed, but we would have all this kind of workshops on how to start cycling, how to maintain your bike, how to ride a bike in the city and on the streets, legislation, traffic code, all those kind of things. This is essential to also have a bike community and bicycle usage in the city. And to say this as a public policy, I was really amazed on what Mexico City does around that. So they also have a similar story as São Paulo, is growing the infrastructure in quite a short time, but it was all due also to the bike advocates in the city from the, I think it's called BYCS or something like that.
BYCS, yeah.
BYCS. But mainly doing a lot of activities on the streets and bike rides, and also bike to ride or bike lessons. And I was seeing their bike lessons is amazing, like with kids, like 50 kids at a time every weekend, closing the streets to make leisure area for people, and people practicing their bike rides. So that's definitely the kind of soft measures which joins with the infrastructure and makes it possible to have a bike community.
Yeah, that's great. Aline, did you think any soft measures examples? And maybe you can even talk a little bit about the experience of doing the movie Bikes versus Cars, and how that impacted your whole work and cycling advocacy in general.
Tá. Aqui, antes de falar do Bikes versus Carros, aqui em São Paulo tá acontecendo nesse momento uma pressão muito grande para abertura de ruas para as pessoas. Então, tem acontecido algumas pressões para fechar a rua para carro e abrir para mobilidade ativa, né? Então, os movimentos de mobilidade a pé têm feito uma pressão muito grande, e os movimentos de bicicleta, obviamente, apoiam, e a gente acha que as coisas são conectadas, né? Você trouxe o manual da Bicicleta Faz Bem ao Comércio, né? Que é um manual que a gente usa até hoje. Ele deve ter mais de 5 anos já, mas ele foi um dos grandes responsáveis por algumas conquistas aqui com comerciantes em São Paulo. Os comerciantes são ainda bastante reativos às bicicletas, mas a gente já tem grupos de comerciantes favoráveis e que tem feito aí um advocacy ao nosso favor. E esse manual, esse folheto, a gente distribui ainda em audiências públicas, em manifestações, e tem tido aí uma grande ajuda para a gente, né? Sobre o filme, inclusive vocês vão conversar com, eu acho que foi ela JP, que esteve na Colômbia, no Fórum Mundial da Bicicleta. Acho que não foi ela, não. Foi ela?
Do Bikeonomics?
Well, it was the author. It was the author of the book, but we're not talking with the author of the book. It's another person from Toronto, from the Center for Active Transportation. But she's involved in an initiative in Toronto with a bike lane that really they have studies that show that after the implementation of the bike lane, the Bloor bike lane, anyone here in Ontario and in Canada knows the story about the Bloor bike lane. How after the implementation, there were more people, they're spending more money, and that it's a commercial corridor, so they're spending more money on that street. So we're talking to her next week.
Eu ia comentar disso porque no evento, teve evento que eu encontrei eu esqueci o nome dela, Ellie Blue, que é a autora do Bikeonomics. E em algum momento a gente falava sobre que se a infraestrutura não muda, a gente não consegue mudar o comportamento. Então, eu concordo que não só a infraestrutura faz uma cidade melhor, ou ciclável e tudo isso, e com áreas verdes e com rios urbanos, mas se a gente não promove uma mudança de comportamento e usa, né, a demanda por uma cidade melhor para reivindicar espaços melhores, políticas públicas mais humanas, as cidades tendem a não mudar o comportamento, né? E a gente está vendo com a pandemia esse cenário onde muitos especialistas veem uma oportunidade, né, com a redução de emissões, com ar limpo, com menos barulho nas cidades, mas a gente aqui no Brasil que sofre com uma política fascista, né? A gente tem hoje um presidente fascista no poder. Se a gente não consegue mudar a estrutura do país, para onde vai o recurso público do país, é capaz de, quando acabar a pandemia ou quando a gente começar a retomar a nossa economia, a gente sinta efeitos muito piores do que os anteriores da pandemia. Então, correr atrás do prejuízo, que é um ditado brasileiro, se torna uma realidade na nossa economia. Então, a venda de carros aumente muito, porque as pessoas não vão querer andar de transporte público, não tem investimento em trem, em transporte coletivo de alta capacidade para carregar não só pessoas, mas cargas também. Uma economia de baixo carbono, que é um debate internacional extremamente importante. Então, eu acredito que trazer mais pessoas, mesmo sem uma infraestrutura adequada, mas trazer mais pessoas para demandar dos nossos governos mais infraestrutura, é um ciclo virtuoso, né? A gente precisa de mais gente demandando uma mudança de cidades, uma mudança de comportamento, de cultura e de economia também.
Thanks, Aline. So Aline was talking about the importance of have this virtuous cycle that, yes, infrastructure is important, but it's also important to have those supporting measures to have this push from the community, from the citizens in having that cycling infrastructure. So one reinforces the other. Thank you, Aline. And also, I didn't know that. So this little manual that I brought from Brazil with me, the project has over 5 years now, and they also already got a lot of support from many local businesses, and it's been a very effective tool to raise awareness and support and gather support for cycling. That's great to hear. That's great news. Just because we're already about the end, to end our chat here, I'm going to jump to our final question that we always ask our guests. So you can even close your eyes if you want to think about it and really imagine this future. Imagine that we really implemented all we're talking about, all those important things, the cycling infrastructure, the supports. We're paying people to bike. our government really understands, and we just can't do anything other than really push the bike forward. Can you describe the world that you see in your mind's eye? How does that world look like? I love that you both have a big smile on your faces as you're imagining this future.
Of course,
Pode
of
começar,
course.
João.
That's our dream, right, Aline? But I would start saying by not but what I see, but something that is affecting me drastically now, which is quite which is right now what is happening right now, which is noise pollution. So it's what I hear. So I've been affected quite a lot right now that surrounding is really noisy. No, because I've been I think no, it's the noise pollution around here has been really heavy because of motorcycling. Yeah, okay. You hear me, right? Yeah. But the noise pollution from motorcycles around here has been really loud because it's been increasing deliveries and logistics, people on motorcycles and those really loud motorcycles. So I've been feeling that in this scenario you gave me, that I could really have a silent city in a way of the noise pollution, but also having the possibility to hear sounds of people talking and birds and all those things. So I've been really connecting to my listening in this COVID pandemia. And I would say also to another sense, which is smelling. So I've been connecting a lot to really a much cleaner city in the way that I smell, and I don't smell pollution. I don't smell air pollution, water pollution, and all those kinds of pollution. So I also think that comes to me. Yeah, not what I see, but what I hear and what I smell.
And food pollution also, a comida. Bom, eu moro perto de um grande rio aqui em São Paulo, chamado Rio Pinheiros. E sempre que eu saio de casa, eu passo por ele. Eu tenho que me transportar, né? Passar por cima dele, pelas pontes de São Paulo. E eu sempre penso nessa cidade do meu imaginário, da minha utopia, né? A utopia me move, né? E a minha utopia é uma cidade que eu consiga estar próxima dos rios da cidade. São Paulo tem muitos quilômetros de rios. Existe um estudo que fala que qualquer pessoa está a pelo menos 200 metros de algum rio aqui em São Paulo. Só que todos eles estão submersos. A maior parte deles, né, estão submersos e por cima tem o asfalto, construções e tudo isso. Então, a minha cidade dos meus sonhos, ela é melhor resolvida com a água. Ela tem mais áreas verdes, muito mais áreas verdes. E quando eu comentei da conexão entre cidade, campo e floresta, eu fico pensando em como que a gente consegue aprender com os povos que moram na floresta, com os povos originários do Brasil e do mundo, a lidar melhor com a terra, né? A lidar melhor com o alimento, com o ar, com a água, com tudo que a gente precisa para viver. Então, a minha cidade tem muita bicicleta, obviamente. Eu vejo muitas bicicletas, muitas crianças usando bicicleta. Mas eu vejo principalmente mais pessoas negras na rua, andando sem ter medo, mais povos indígenas sendo respeitados nos seus locais, né? E a gente conseguindo ter um diálogo aberto com as populações das cidades, a diversidade que a gente tem, né, nas cidades, para construir um futuro que seja melhor para todo mundo, né? Que seja um complemento entre todos os olhares, né? Não só o meu, não só de uma classe ou de um grupo, mas que a gente consiga construir um futuro que dialogue com todo mundo. E principalmente eu fico pensando muito na questão da água e da comida, porque a gente não pensa na logística das coisas, né? Nosso prato está na mesa, a gente não sabe de onde que veio aquela comida. E às vezes o transporte daquela comida tornou aquela comida com muito mais impacto ambiental do que você imagina. Eu, esses dias, comprei um melão, que é uma fruta aqui brasileira, e ela veio de Mossoró. Então, ela rodou esse Brasil inteiro de caminhão para chegar no meu prato, e ela tem um impacto de carbono enorme. Então, como que a gente consegue também ter esse tipo de conversa, né, para planejar as cidades?
Thanks, Aline. Well, guys, thank you so much for all that you shared with us. I think this is really a dream that we're dreaming together in many parts of the world, like here in Canada, in Brazil, and so many other places. We see so many cities doing great projects and having great initiatives to promote cycling, and so many people that are just trying to use the bike just because it makes sense. And I hope we can keep that dream and that imagination alive, and we can make our cities better with bikes. Dan, would you like to add any final words before we finish?
Just a big thank you to JP and Aline for coming on and sharing your perspective from all the way from Sao Paulo. So that was so great to have you. And thanks, Luis, for making the connection. And just a quick reminder of next week's talk around the same time, Wednesday at 3 p.m. next week. We'll be having Nancy Smith-Lee from TCAT on. So tune in then. But thanks for all the work you've done, for your work that's already impacting us here, your example that you've been leading, and continue the good work.
Thank you.
Have
a great day, everyone.
Obrigada, muito obrigada.
Valeu. Beijos, tchau.
Bye.